Growth has a lot of things. It has marketing, it has sales, it has content, it has social media, it has data and everything. Somehow a bad reputation for the sales people and the business development people. So that's why they prefer calling themselves the growth guy or the growth sales guy, because, of course, the society validates them better when they call themselves a growth person. A growth person is someone who actually focuses more on learning rather than winning. To understand what two things will never work is more important than understanding the other aspects of the business. For distribution, the core instrumental thing is traffic or eyeballs. So now you need to understand, first thing is what will bring more eyeballs and traffic to your page. So social media is a long shot game. It's very rare that you see, people getting success in the short run. You need to invest, keep on investing, keep on experimenting. And as I said, either you win or you learn. The first win in anything is to just get into it.
You can't just focus on a million channels at once. You need to figure one out, put it on autopilot, then shift your focus there. If you're not changing, if you're not learning quickly, if you're doing these long, drawn-out 3-month cycles, you're barely a growth person.
True. So I believe in work-life priority rather than work-life balance. Once you stop enjoying your work, you are just, taking your body to the office and coming back home. You're not actually creating an impact. And being a human and not creating an impact is just, the biggest blunder you're doing to yourself. It's not about, working very hard. It's more about working consistently.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited to bring you Shubham Khoker, who's head of growth at Topmate.io. He went to IIT. He is somebody who has a ton of insights on technology, product, and growth. Shubham, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for bringing me on your podcast. Super glad to be a part of it.
Is this your first in-person podcast?
Yeah, first in person.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot more to come. Topmate is doing really well. You are an awesome guy. So where I want to start is, what is a head of growth?
So head of growth is someone who, handles product, sales, social media, since social media is a big distribution for a lot of companies these days, and marketing and data, and he tailors them all together, stitches them together just to give the best ROI for the company. This is what the bookish or the protocols or traditional knowledge definition for being a head of growth would be. But again, we can go deeper into specifications as per what industry the company is from. So if I talk about, let's say, someone for Topmate, so social media would be it has a big role to play when it comes to growth. For something like Apollo, I guess emails and SEO and ads would have a big role to play. So basically, head of growth has to do everything, overlooking each and every aspect of the company, and then, doubling down on certain aspects of that as per the industry and the niche of the company.
So is this really only a startup role? Because the way you described it, you're doing so many different things that would normally be individual people.
Not really. We have seen people being as head of growth at Dropbox, at Twitter, at whatnot. It's just that, it is becoming more and more mature and established with time. So not really a startup role, but it's just that at startups, people wear many hats. And hence, it has become more matured recently. And startups tend to have a single person who can manage a lot of things together. So that's why it has become a more startup-prone role. But, if you go to big firms such as Dropbox, Twitter, there's one more, I don't really remember, but it has something box in it. That also has a head of growth. And there are a lot of bigger companies, they in fact, divide head of growth into different aspects. Head of growth product, head of growth activation, head of growth monetization and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. So I have been both the head of growth and the head of growth product. So when I was head of growth at ThreadUp, I managed, like you said, marketing teams, product teams, analytics teams, and a few creatives. So it was kind of like this everything. Then when I was at head of product growth, I just managed product managers. Yeah. So I think that's the most common way it's organized.
Yeah, it is. Generally speaking, so for a B2B SaaS company, after it has become a certain mature established into the market, head of growth product becomes a more sensible role for them.
This episode is brought to you by Interpret. Interpret unifies all your customer interactions, from Gong calls to Zendesk tickets to Twitter threads and App Store reviews, making them available for comprehensive analysis. As we've profiled in the newsletter, it's the trusted choice of product organizations like Canva, Notion, and Descript. They rely on Interpret to drive forward their voice of customer programs. What makes Interpret special is its ability to, 1, build customer-specific AI models that provide more accurate categorization. 2, connect customer feedback directly to revenue impact so you can prioritize confidently. And 3, uncover insights with their Wisdom AI Copilot so you have an intuitive chat interface to access your data. So if you want a custom model built for your organization, get in touch with the team at interpret.com/product growth. That's ENTERPRET.com/product growth. This episode is brought to you by Dovetail, the AI-first customer insights hub for all teams. Dovetail has always been the go-to tool for teams that want to find insights in customer calls, user interviews, or documents. Now they've stepped it up with the release of Dovetail 3.0. It's 3 new products and a ton of AI features that make it faster and easier than ever before to truly get to the heart of what your customers want. You can get a real-time pulse on what your customers are thinking with Dovetail's automated feedback analysis platform, Channels, or pull summaries and insights from every customer interaction your team has ever had using their conversational AI, Ask Dovetail. You can even recruit from over 3 million participants directly in Dovetail. All of this is just the tip of the iceberg. Dovetail wants to give everyone in the organization instant access to their customers at any time. From roadmaps, discovery to strategy sessions, and more, it's never been easier to make customer-centric decisions. The good news? Listeners of this podcast can try Dovetail's Pro plan along with their newest products and features free for 30 days. Just go to dovetail.com/Akash.
But initially, when they're building up, when they're trying to onboard their first 10 clients, for them, a head of growth in a generic sense makes more sense to them. But of course, since we are living in an era of B2B SaaS right now with a flavor of AI in it, so yeah, a lot of head of growth roles are starting to get merged within product. I mean, we have recently seen what I guess Airbnb has started doing it. Like they're merging their product role with marketing and growth these days.
Yes, that's right. So there has been an explosion of people with the title growth or head of growth. And fundamentally, it's kind of like a blurring of departments. It's like a reinvention of departments. What do you think is kind of driving that need? Like, why aren't you just called head of marketing or head of product or something like that?
So I guess for that, we need to understand growth from a business POV first. So if I talk about growth as a concept or as a profession, so what I have learned so far in my experience, growth as a concept or as a role for a business, it's something which keeps on evolving as the company grows. So if I give you an example, when I joined TopMate, for me, growth initially was to get more clients. But now it's not the same metric I'm chasing today. Being a growth guy, despite being a growth guy today as well. So it keeps on changing as the company evolves, as the company becomes mature, as the company gets more round of funding, gets more money, gets more users. So it keeps on improving, it keeps on evolving. So when we say that a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of people who put it out there, okay, I'm working on growth strategy, I'm working on growth in marketing. So it's, as I mentioned earlier, growth has a lot of things. It has marketing, it has sales, it has content, it has social media, it has data and everything. So it all depends upon what's the problem statement company is chasing right now from a typical first principle business POV. So let's say if it's customer acquisition. And so maybe a business development or a sales guy who is trying to get the first 10 clients in a very non-scalable manner. He's a growth person. But let's say if I talk about you when you joined Apollo.io, I guess your problem statement was to, get more paying customer or paid customers. So at that time, the head of growth has a different problem statement. And he probably might have worked along with you parallelly to cater to the solution, to cater to the problem and make the best use out of it. So that's how it keeps on evolving. But again, I always say growth is something which keep on changing. The growth problem statement, it's something which keeps on changing as the company grows, as the company matures. And also, companies keep on pivoting these days a lot. So this is how the growth and head of growth, growth marketing, growth sales, growth social media, there are a lot of blurry lines. But it's just that, it's just like AI is a buzzword. Growth is kind of a buzzword which people, fancy it on their social media, LinkedIn profiles. That's why I see a lot of blurry lines coming up. But people don't really understand that growth keeps on evolving. It's not something static.
I think that is actually why the profession has exploded.
Exactly.
Because companies change. But a lot of these departments, they want to apply the exact same playbook at all levels. Even when they're a young company, they want to just do experiments on the marketing homepage. And then when they're a big company, they just want to do experiments on the marketing homepage. A growth guy says, marketing homepage is one of the levers I could use, but maybe the season for it is in year 1 and year 4. Maybe from year 2 to year 3, we don't even touch it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's actually the fundamental nature of growth that has helped it succeed when it's practiced the way you and I have done it, which is kind of like an all-purpose growth. I think that another type of growth we see, we talked a little bit about growth product, is growth sales. Exactly. And this is actually very common in the area where we're speaking to everybody from the triangle. So I encounter a lot of growth people. And you know what they really are? They're sales. And in fact, what they are is kind of this, what I would call full stack sales. So in your traditional B2B SaaS sales, you have your sales development representative. He goes out or she goes out and she's emailing people. She's calling people. She's developing this meeting. Then she books this meeting with an enterprise executive. Then an enterprise executive sells the deal and then they book it, send it over to the customer success. So there's basically like 3 teams, and there might even in between before customer success be a solutions engineer. What I found is that like growth sales is doing like those 4 things. They're like kind of end to end, finding leads, getting them as customers, and then even getting them activated so that you can expand. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of growth?
So one thing I just want to add up what you said right now. So, I don't know about the US context, but in the Indian construct, there is somehow a bad reputation for the sales people and the business development people. So that's why they prefer calling themselves the growth guy or the growth sales guy, because, of course, the society validates them better when they call themselves a growth person.
Yeah.
And also I didn't get your question. Like, can you please elaborate?
Yeah. How many have you encountered a lot of these growth salespeople, and what context did I miss about how that job differs from the job you and I have had?
So, I've been a growth sales guy too. When I started with TopMate, I reached out to a lot of people on LinkedIn. I tried to penetrate the network I have from my IIT, from other people I know already in the network. So, growth sales is something I would say it's probably, one of the most first steps. It's a baby steps you take when you're entering into the growth arena itself. And it's everywhere. Sales, I feel it's the first step every business has to take. Even if you're building Google, Microsoft, or any business in the world right now, sales has to be there always. So growth sales is always there. And of course, it's kind of scales up. It kind of gets automated as you grow up, as the company grows. Initially people even if we look at the sales itself as an industry, earlier people used to do cold calling. Earlier people used to just reach out to people. They used to attend emails. Now solutions like Rocket Reach came, Apollo came. Then people started cold emailing. Then solutions like LinkedIn came. Then people started cold messaging. So sales has always been there, and it will always be a very integral part of growth, as per my understanding. And nobody needs to shy away from the fact that sales needs to be there in each and every business at some point of time or the other. And it will be a part of growth, but it's just that it keeps on scaling, it keeps on getting mature and more established. And as you mentioned initially, you need to keep on innovating on that aspect. So sales is not just selling thing. You need to keep on innovating. You need to keep on working on it. That okay, I tried a certain strategy in sales, it didn't work out. I'll try something else. I'll try to change the channel. Okay, if email is not working, I'll try a webinar. If webinar is not working, I'll try a cold reach out. If cold reach out is not working, I'll try the social media. So sales has to be there. And if you call it growth sales, that makes more sense in the current era right now.
Yeah, I think that point you mentioned about evolution is why I think actually having a growth title makes a lot of sense, because your average salesperson, they want to implement a sales play, right? So maybe their play is, this company has figured out we do outbound phone calls with a dialer, where you dial 200 people a day and it's automated dialing and you talk, then you book your meeting and that's your job. I feel like that's what a lot of salespeople want, is like they want this structure, this playbook. Your average growth person, they're saying, let me figure out what the right playbook is. Let me question if this playbook even makes sense. Let me test out 7 different playbooks. And so I think that's what's very unique about the growth role.
Yeah, just adding one more point to it. See, a sales guy would be like, he'll use a Twilio as a dialer, feed 200 numbers into it, do an automated calling, and then just get into it. But what a growth sales guy would actually do is, he will try out 5 templates with those 200 numbers and will figure out, okay, with 40 numbers for each template, which 2 templates work the best. Then he'll pick out those 2 templates and populate 500 more numbers to it. And that's how the conversion will increase. So this is where just sales and this is where growth sales differ from each other.
I think that experimentation is actually probably the core characteristic of a growth practitioner is whether you're growth sales, growth product, growth activation, growth social media, you can't just do your job as the person without growth would do it. You need to be taking bets on experiments. Even when you have something working, you need to constantly be experimenting more.
I mean, so this is what I feel like when I say that it keeps on evolving. So it keeps on evolving with experiments. I mean, the company wouldn't really grow with just time. I mean, you go to office every day for 2 years, it wouldn't just grow. You go to office with a different mindset on a weekly basis, trying out different new things. That's how company will grow. That's how your growth, your role as a growth person will grow. So experimentation is one of the core things a growth guy needs to do. I mean, and experimentation is on the basis of first principles and what you're doing right now. So I mean, there's a very common saying, either you win or you learn. So a growth person is someone who actually focuses more on learning rather than winning. So I mean, I always ask my team specifically, I mean, if we run an experiment, if we don't achieve results in a week, the 8th day we are sitting for 2 hours straight up. I don't really care. I mean, if it's 9 in the night or 9 in the morning, we are sitting together for 2 hours and we are just focusing on what did we learn. And I probably prefer more meetings when the experiments didn't work out rather than when experiments start working well. Because if you're not learning or, just documenting or journaling or brainstorming that why this thing didn't work. Because to understand what 2 things will never work is more important than understanding the other aspects of the business. Because you basically start filtering out things and you start taking cues from them that why this didn't work. And in the next experiment, you'll be more prepared. You'll be more innovative that, okay, this didn't work out and this didn't work out for this and this reason. And now in the next experiment, you are more prepared to get the better results or the better learnings, I would say.
Yeah, so I actually want to simulate one of these conversations. So my business, for people who don't know, right, I need to drive traffic to my newsletter and my podcast, okay? So I'm pretty successful with LinkedIn. So let's not talk about that. That's what worked, right? Let's talk about some experiment that hasn't been working for me, which is Instagram. I haven't been able to drive much traffic. I know TopMate actually has been able to on Instagram. So that's why I secretly want to learn more from you. But I think that let's simulate the full conversation. So if I came to you on my team and I said, hey, I'm doing some experiments on Instagram and they're not working, what would be kind of the next question? How would the discussion go?
So see, I mean, first we need to understand that you are focusing on social media as one of your distribution channels. And for distribution, the core instrumental thing is traffic or eyeballs. So now you need to understand, first thing is what will bring more eyeballs and traffic to your page. So I'm just assuming that for you, the right now the problem statement is to get more people visit your Instagram profile or engage. So, but if we make the full flow chart, basically for someone who needs to engage to your Instagram profile or content, first they need to see it. First, your content needs to have a certain number of eyeballs. And if you make a certain flow chart, okay, if I get, let's say 1 million eyeballs, 50% is the conversion rate, people who visit my profile. 20% is the drop-off rate, people who engage with other content, and 10% is the another drop-off who eventually follow my page. So now you need to run a certain experiments which will generate more eyeballs. Either the thing is you work on better conversion, but I'll always say first start with the most simple problem, which is on the top of the funnel, where you get more and more eyeballs. So to get more eyeballs for Instagram, one is by first experiment, and the very basic and simple would be to diversify your content. It can be reels, it can be a post, it can be a carousel, it can be an Instagram live, it can be stories, it can be just some personal story, it can be just vlogging your day-to-day life. So once you start, experiment or diversify your content, and if you have, let's say, experimentation, as I mentioned, if you have let's say, experimented 7 types of content, you'll probably get a feel that, okay, my daily vlogging life is something which entices people more on my social media. So then you need to double down. And if your ultimate goal, if the content of your Instagram page is about product management, then try to tweak in that into your product management insights or learning which you put out as a content. Probably how a day-to-day life of product management person looks like. Or if, let's say, if I say Instagram live is something which is bringing more people to your traffic, then try to collaborate with people. And for social media, this is a well-established fact that when people start collaborating, it actually helps. I mean, frankly speaking, because you are basically getting eyeballs from traffic, from your own traffic and from someone else's traffic as well. So it's a win-win situation for you and the other person you are collaborating with. So these are the few basic steps for the basic expense I would suggest anyone who's trying to grow on Instagram right now. So just try to focus on your top of the funnel first. If you're able to increase your, what I can say, the eyeballs your page is getting or your content is getting. And then of course, now there are like hundreds of tools out there on every social media platform, which can give you like a demographic division. Yeah, who's the, like from which geography people are engaging with your content.
So let's break it down. So like the 7 types of tests that we've done on Instagram and how they've performed. So the first one we've done is like reels, which are shorts from our podcast. And we've done 2 types. We've done with and without graphics. We've generally found that graphics works well. So we've been able to expand, for instance, from daily podcast reels. I had like 1,000 accounts that had seen my account. My Instagram is small, all the way up to like 30,000 accounts had seen my account in 28 days by doing these daily reels with graphics. But interestingly, my profile visits and followers were very low from these reels. Like I'm just basically stayed from like 160 to 183 followers. So I got very few followers and profile visits. And then traffic to my website or podcast was even less. So I got very, very little from that. That's one experiment we did. A second experiment we did is I have these infographics. Those infographics are what drive all my growth on LinkedIn. So we tried posting those infographics on Instagram. We got very, very little engagement. We weren't able to increase our profile visits at all. Like you said, the top of funnel. Another thing we tried recently is like stories from my life. Interestingly enough, the reach has been very small. But for instance, the event we did yesterday, 6 of them came from those stories. Yeah. So the stories, what we've seen is that they're reaching relevant people, driving traffic, and conversion. So we're pretty happy so far with the performance of stories. So to summarize so far the 3 formats, we found reels are helping us with our reach, stories are helping us with our conversion. We also tried memes as posts on the main account. What we found is that these get good engagement and they drive followers, but they drive no traffic and no conversions. So we're not sure if we need to keep those in the middle of the funnel strategy. And then the final thing we found is that overall, the more volume we post on Instagram, the more the algorithm likes us. Yeah. So those are probably, to summarize, like the main experiments I've run so far. What would kind of be the next step from there?
So, I mean, since you mentioned like reels give you reach and stories give you the conversion. So try to tailor your content in a flow where reel is the next step to your story, or story is the next step to your reel. So let's say if you talk about yesterday's event. So you talked on your reel about the event and then you put out a story for people to register for it. So try to tailor your content in such a way that the first step for people to get aware about anything is via your reels. And when you want them to take an action, it can go from your story. So this is like a clear-cut learning we have already from a very small data set.
Yeah.
So doubling down on it, maybe let's say for the next 3 in-person meetups you have, and you'll probably crack one of the growth channels for converting people.
Yep.
So this can be one thing. Second thing is, so we also need to understand that social media, in Instagram specifically, is a place where people have a very small, what I can say, retention span. I mean, I see thousands of reels on a daily basis. I mean, this is what my me time looks like. I mean, when I reach home after office, I just scroll 1 hour on Instagram, but I hardly follow those pages.
Okay.
Because the algorithm is pushing the same type of reels on my page every now and then.
Yep.
So I don't really need to follow those pages.
Yep.
I mean, a very interesting thing. So there are a lot of Instagram pages who keep on putting clips of movies, breaking down into, let's say, hundreds of pieces together. And then they post 10 reels a day. So I've watched like 10 movies from those reels in 10 days. And I don't follow those pages. But the Instagram algorithm pushes those contents regularly on my feed.
Yep.
So we really need to understand the algorithm. Because for Instagram, might be just an assumption, their metric is not to be, to increase someone's follower.
Right.
For them, it must be to increase your reach, to push the same type of content to your audience so that they keep on watching it. So what I can say is, you can tailor your content in such a way. Let's say do a series of 3 reels, and the last reel there has a hook line which asks them, which gives them a CT or something like that, which can be like following your page or something like that, and you can get your motive out of it. If I talk about, a very good example would be, let's say, to subscribe to your newsletter. So you can give a small glimpse of what you're coming up with in your next newsletter. Let's say the first 2 reels can be what you did at Apollo, what you did at Fortnite, And the third thing is, I'm happy to help you guys out with your product problems. Why don't you just go and follow or subscribe to my podcast or my newsletter? So things like these, where you tailor your content as per the learnings from your already existing content needs to be done. And for that, I guess, I personally feel everyone needs a Gen Z in their team. This is where we lag a lot, because we are someone who grew up with Facebook, right?
Yeah.
We didn't had Instagram when we were younger. So, this is where the Gen Z mindset, and that is why you will see a lot of people in the social media space being ruled by Gen Zs.
Yeah.
So this is how you can try out, streamlining your Instagram and getting more reach out of it. But again, I'll always say, getting more followers on Instagram shouldn't be a metric for anyone when you're trying to build your page. It should be more on the reach side, because once people start realizing that your page is giving them a value, they'll automatically follow it.
So we started the conversation with Instagram with like this idea of success or failure. And it's definitely been a failure in terms of ROI on my time, because if you think about it, I only have one me, and I can't create 3 preview posts on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. So how do you think about the trade-offs and whether something is a success and whether you should keep investing or not?
So, I guess you only answered this question yesterday at the event. So, you can't really manage all the platforms at the same time.
Yeah.
You probably, what I like, if I talk about TopMate itself, so we first focused on LinkedIn. When we realized, okay, we have the playbook for our business on LinkedIn, then we shifted our focus on Instagram. And now we're experimenting a lot on LinkedIn, on Instagram specifically. And now we have started to sort of focus on YouTube. So as an individual, even if normally businesses also can't manage all the 3 platforms, provided if they have a very small team. So if you are like a solopreneur creator, so for you it would be difficult, in my opinion, to manage all the 3 platforms along with podcast and newsletter. For what I would suggest is focus on one. Put that on an autopilot mode, and then start experimenting on the other one. And also, social media is a long shot game. It's very rare that you see people getting success in the short run. It's generally, I'm sure, you grow your LinkedIn, you have been growing your LinkedIn since COVID, right?
Yeah.
And now you'll be able to now you have been able to monetize it. Probably, I guess, after 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So same will be the case with Instagram, and it will be more difficult now, given the fact there are a lot more people who started with Instagram along with you when you started with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So they understand the playbook better than you. So, but again, so it will take time. You need to invest, keep on investing, keep on experimenting. And as I said, either you win or you learn. It might be a case that you might realize that product management is not a space meant for Instagram.
Right.
I haven't seen someone talking about product management on Instagram.
There isn't a successful value-based
although
account.
I follow all the shitty reels on Instagram, but I haven't seen someone who is talking about product management on Instagram. But 10 years back, there was no one talking on YouTube either.
Yeah, but now if you look at Instagram, there are people talking about software engineering, data engineering. So what I've noticed is those 2 adjacent fields are succeeding. So there's clearly something there. Like Zach Wilson, he gets thousands of likes on every single reel. So you would think that PM could succeed if that type of content
it's
succeeds.
just that, first move, people talk about first move advantage, but I guess it has more disadvantage rather than advantage. But yeah, of course, if there is no one, then there is a lot of gap and opportunity for you. But still, it will take some time. But rather, I would suggest, if you think your podcast, your newsletter and LinkedIn is on an autopilot mode, then you should shift to Instagram. Because what we, as as a someone like you who has grown on one platform, who is becoming a full-time creator, we all have that calculative mindset where after every experiment or after every 1 month or 2 months, we keep on having that question: do I have a ROI on it?
Yeah.
And which sort of is a good thing and a bad thing both. It's a double-sided sword for both, for you and for the other creators as well. But I will still say, give it a time, try more things, try more experiments, learn from what people have done so far. As you mentioned, Jack Wilson. There are other people too on Instagram who have done big. And not just focus on the knowledge professionals. I would suggest try on the infotainment side as well. People who put dance reels, meme reels, people who create skits and stuff. Mm-hmm. Learn from them as well. Because Instagram primarily got a lot of traction from those infotainment content. But now we see a lot of people from data, software, tech roles trying to earn millions out of it. Taking cues from them and parallelly doing a lot of experiments from very short learnings, very small learnings you have, and then implementing them in the next set of experiments is the next thing for you.
Yeah. And for me, it's like interesting. So I've not just mastered LinkedIn. I also mastered Twitter, where like I'm one of the biggest PM content creators on Twitter, on Substack as well. So I kind of have 3 platforms already. And kind of my hypothesis with Instagram is what you said, which is that you don't monetize until like 3 or 4 years down the line. So that's why I'm giving the effort now almost to like build my knowledge of how to succeed in it so that 3 years down the line, I can have it as a 4th and a 5th channel. I'm actually doing the same thing with SEO. So SEO and Instagram, I'm not very good at them, but I'm just investing because I know 3 to 4 years down the line that would work. Do you think a lot of head of growth should think that way? Like invest in the channel just so you build the muscle, even if it's not an immediate ROI?
So I feel a lot of that goes like in the backside of it has to, give a credit to your gut feeling. So in your mind, of course, the gut feeling has to be backed by a little bit of data and something that if you feel that, yes, product management as a space can grow on Instagram, even if you have like a very feeble idea or a feeble feeling about it, then yeah, I mean, you just go bang on it. Just get all into it and start working on it. I mean, see, when you start off, the first win in anything is to just get into it. So if you are into it, and SEO, as you mentioned, is of course one of the best thing you need to do when you're growing on social media. I mean, so I would still suggest, since you already have Substack, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So I mean, what next now? It's either Instagram or YouTube left for you.
Yeah.
So you should or TikTok is there.
This is our attempt at YouTube, right? This high quality video production. Yeah. So we're doing everything, but I think the lesson, like to abstract away from my specific problem now for people listening is, yes, growth is all about experimentation and evolving, like we said. But at some point, you also need to look at all the available channels. And once you reach a certain set of scale, you need to just create a learning path within that channel. If you have conviction, like I do about Instagram, that it can succeed for you. And just for everybody listening, by the way, I don't need to just do PM content. I can also do tech content. I can do careers content. So I kind of had these 3 buckets. So my hypothesis is at least tech content I know can succeed on Instagram. PM, we can create. Careers also succeed on Instagram. So that's my thinking is like, if you can develop some sort of conviction around a channel, it's actually worth investing because especially in the social media side of success doesn't happen overnight.
True. I mean, I've seen a lot of people on TopMate. When we started off, they were like very new in the creator space and now they have like millions of followers. They're earning close to, like, I can't reveal the amount, but they're earning crazy amount of money just from TopMate.
Yeah.
And the social media has scaled up like 10 times what they were 3 years back. What they did was, as you mentioned, experimenting, investing and learning from it and then just doing it again and again and over.
Yeah. I think that's the key for all growth loop people. So I know that whenever I ask this question, people are like, well, there's no average day and each day is different. But I still want you to paint the picture. If you're trying to create an illustrative day for somebody who wants to become head of growth, let's say the next IIT grad who's trying to become you, right? How would you say like your day looks like, the average day, if you were to average it out so that they can understand? Like, let's go through when you wake up, what meetings you have, how much deep work time you have, all the way through like what the evening Slack schedule, et cetera, looks like.
Okay. So generally, like I'll give you like what it used to be and what it is now, like the full overview of it. So when I started working as a head of growth, the first thing I used to was, I just wake up, do my normal daily course and then head into the office, or just if I'm working from home, I just start working. And that didn't really give me a lot of a good feeling or a ROI out of it, or I should say productivity from a productivity POV. Then I realized I need to make a schedule or a structure out of it. So now what I do is like I wake up, I hit the office by, let's say, 10 to 11 a.m. in the morning. Or if not in the office, I start working at my home. The first thing I do is check out all the dashboards I've made for myself. And I check out like what has happened in the last 24 hours. I mean, I probably might have done something yesterday. I probably might have run an experiment. And how it has changed. And I look at from 0 to 1. Like, did it help me in social media growth? Did it help me in landing page traffic? Did it help me in landing page traffic? Did it help me in getting more bookings for the user? Everything, like whatever the metrics I have for each and every experiment, I look at them and I try to rewrite each and everything which didn't work out as per my expectation and which did work. And which didn't work out, I put up a scheduled meeting for my team at probably 5 or 6 in the evening, which is around the snack time. And then we discuss like half an hour, 45 minutes daily that we did something yesterday or 2 days before. I mean, as per the deadline for the experiment, and then we discuss that in the evening. Generally I try to reach office if I start working from home, reach office maximum 11:30 or 12. When I reach office, I take a call. I discuss with everything, like my social media team, my data team, my product team, and the business team. So which is basically me and the founders. We discuss, okay, this is happening right now. We did X number of experiments in the past 1 week, and what's next to be done. And then we figure out, okay, this is the current problem we are facing. So right now we are facing a problem, let's say, with the referrals. So then we probably chart out, okay, what's next to be done. So this goes on till lunch, but I make sure that after every meeting, there is an actionable for me or for the team with whom I'm discussing my. So before lunch, I focus on the dashboards and the current problem statement we are having. And after that, I keep a lot of follow-up meetings with my team. And in between my lunch and snacks time, I keep like a 1.5 hour slot for myself where I do a lot of reading. Because sometimes because at startups, you don't have an end time. Like when will you reach back home? Sometimes I go at 6, sometimes I go at 9. So there's nothing like that. So I keep like 1.5 hour slot myself for between the lunch and the snack time, where I do read a lot of things. It can be a blog. It can be like an article on business. It can be an article on strategy. It can be anything, technically speaking. Because as a growth person, you need to keep on updating yourself. Because generally, growth persons are people who don't really code by themselves, who don't really have to be a part of the tech side of the things. So for them to keep themselves updated with what is happening around the globe and everything, reading is an essential part. So there's a very good thing about me and my CTO. So we have this monthly bet where we complete one book each month. And if we don't complete, then I need to pay him something, or he needs to pay me something. So reading is an essential part of me all throughout the day. And whenever, let's say if I'm reading 10 pages or 5 pages or whatever, I try to link it with my day-to-day functioning. And how can I use it better? How can I link it with my day-to-day experiments and everything? Then by the end of the day, around the snacks time, we have a discussion about what are the experiments are happening, how they are running. And by 6 or 7 in the evening, we have an actionable how to improvise our current experiments. So for me, a lot, like the whole day is, centered or revolving around the current experiments we are running. What is the current status? What have we done so far? How has they fared so well? What can we do next to make them improve better? And then by the time we go back home, we all have actionables what to do, in the current experiment again. And then I reach back home. I have a lot of meetings. So basically, when I'm in India, my evening, my time after 8 p.m. as per the Indian Standard Time is more or less packed with a lot of meeting with people sitting in the US.
Yes.
So that's the bad part about when you're trying to cater to 2 different time zones.
Yeah.
So I sleep around 2 or 3 in the night. And then, then it's the same thing. Like you wake up in the morning, hit the gym, do your breakfast and stuff, and then come back to office. So again, experiments it has a lot to do in my day-to-day life. And then just juggling through them with the data and everything. It's something and all thanks to ChatGPT, now when it comes to creating a dashboard or getting some data out of it, I don't really need a SQL guy. Because I'm someone who is very, very new to the coding space. I'm still learning the SQL thing. So I don't really need now a SQL person or data guy to make a dashboard for me. I just put all the details. My CTO has linked ChatGPT with our DB. So I don't really need to write any code now. So I just put down the query in a normal natural language. And he gives me the SQL code. I just put it on the PG admin and I get everything for myself.
Nice. Very cool. So that really sounded like a manager schedule. Paul Graham has this distinction between like a maker and a manager schedule. The manager schedule has a lot of like looking at dashboards, team meetings, then meeting with other clients. Like that was the manager schedule. So do you not have that much maker time? I think that's probably the big difference between your day in the life and mine, where like, I think when I was a head of growth, I actually had to do a lot of like actual individual work. For instance, like writing, experiment spec for what the next experiment this team should run, or reviewing the feature results write-up that somebody sent me, or writing the strategy document for the next quarter. Or a lot of times for me, like when I was at ThreadUp, it would be like for a new executive that they've hired because we were growing super fast. Like, write a document for them, like how growth and this new person we hired for pricing, where I used to manage pricing, but now he's managing pricing, how we can get together. Or I had like a lot of individual work time that I actually had to do. Do you find yourself having a lot of maker time needs?
So right now, so I'll tell you. So when we started TopMate, there were like 4 or 5 people out of us. So that time I was not a manager at all. I was just a maker all the time. Even if I'm looking at a dashboard of the data, I am the only one who is writing learnings out of it and just charting out the next experiment which we can do. But now we have someone who handles the data. Now we have someone who handles the social media. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of meeting around it. So of course, before every meeting, I take like 10 minutes, 5 minutes for myself, write out the basic stuff which I'll be discussing in the meeting. So that is where my maker instincts are limited to right now, because we do have a team right now. So as I mentioned yesterday as well, I generally do not do the execution of the operations part of it. I'm not something which, it's not like I'm shy to do that. It's just that I started learning that I can't do each and every part. And I know a Gen Z is a more suitable person than me when it comes to handling TopMate social media. So I look at the social media numbers, I check it out. Okay, we have more visitors coming from, let's say, US last week. So I'll just talk to her and I'll be like, hey, just list down whatever we have posted in the last 1 week, and just, so I do that maker thing, but in a more collaborative way with my person, with the concerned POC for that specific department.
Yep.
Yeah. So my maker things it's not very individualistic. It's more collaborative right now, but my manager part is more individualistic for me these days.
Okay. Very cool. So you mentioned you rely on real-time user feedback loops with users. Talk more about that, because we've talked a lot about the data side. What about the user side?
So for TopMate, I mean, we figured out, it's specifically for TopMate. I can't really say that it will be applicable to each and every industry. But for TopMate, we only focus on the expert side of the things.
So just for everybody who doesn't know, what does TopMate do?
Oh, okay. So TopMate is a platform which basically helps people like you and me who have some subject matter knowledge, expert, who have subject matter knowledge, who wants to be a creator, who have a distribution, who create content on social media. And there are people who are bombarding your DMs, trying to get in touch with you. So for them, we serve as a platform where they can just directly go on your TopMate page and book a call with you. You can conduct your webinars over there. You can sell your digital products over there. They can send you priority DMs over there. You can sell packages over there. So it's basically trying to make people like you accessible to one and all, but at your own price point, at your own convenience. I mean, you can just put out your calendar that I'm only available on Sundays, let's say. So nobody can book a call outside Sundays with you. So this is what TopMate is trying to do.
Okay. Yeah. So going back to the real-time user feedback loop.
Yeah. So basically for TopMate, we cater to people like you, like the professionals, experts, creators, and subject matter knowledge experts. So for us, what I have done to get a real-time feedback loop is, of course, data is one point which gives you a lot of feedback, but it gives you a feedback on a very generic scale, right? It doesn't give you a very specific feedback. I mean, if you're running an experiment, I'll just check, okay, how many people engaged with it, how many people did open the email, interacted with it, how many people did the click on the CTA or ended up taking a desired action. But what I've done for myself is I've created some cohorts, let's say few people from product, few people from social media, like the personal branding side, few people from software side, few people from tech side. And I'm very much connected with those users. I mean, just like Priya is, more than a user, she's a friend these days. So I try to, after every experiment, I try to talk to them. So this is where my real-time user feedback loop comes in. So after every experiment I run, I try to, talk to few people from each and every cohort, just trying to understand how did they like the content? How did they like the experiment? What was that one thing which, which stand out for them, or it was like horrible for them? So I can give you like a live case study that our email content has changed or transformed like 10 times better in the past 6 months or so. Because I've been specifically talking to a lot of content people on TopMate, just trying to understand, hey, did you check our latest email? Can you please give me a brutal, honest feedback? Was the email too good, or was it too pushy, or was it just like over the top? How do you like it? And people have actually responded back. So it has to do a lot with the interpersonal relationship I have with those people. But yeah, this is the real-time feedback, because of course data gives you a very generic insight, but these people are the one who, as a friend, they can give me, the most brutal, honest feedback anyone can give me in the world. So this is the real-time user feedback loop I've created for myself. And that's why I'm connected to a lot of people on TopMate personally.
Got it. Makes sense. Do you focus on the creator side or the user side, or do you try to have people in both?
I mean, can you just define both the things for me?
Like
first?
people booking calls versus people hosting calls.
People hosting calls.
Okay, so you focus more on that side of the.
Yeah. So we are a Shopify. We are not an Amazon. We are a pure play tool like TopMate. So of course we are building a sub product which is Heto right now, which focuses more on the user side, like the people who are booking calls. But my sole work primarily relies on focusing on people like you, like the experts, people who are hosting calls.
And how did you decide like that's a more important focus area?
I mean, if we don't have enough people on TopMate, if we don't have enough experts like you on TopMate, the other side wouldn't really benefit a lot.
Yeah.
So that's why it's the top of the funnel for the whole product. If there are not enough people on TopMate, there won't be enough bookings happening on TopMate. And that's what the metric, the investors, the VC money and everything, they want us to chase. And also it makes more sense for us from a business POV as well.
Okay.
We get more people and then those people get us more people. Rather than, more people booking calls with one user rather than more people getting, let's say, just one booking.
Okay. So for the average marketplace growth person, if they're trying to decide, they should look at which side is kind of more limiting for them right now, which one are investors caring about, and which one can maybe propel the other. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess marketplace has this tendency to saturate at a certain point of time. And they have a lot of, what I can say, there's a lot of tussle going on within a marketplace. I mean, a very good example would be, do you shop on Amazon?
Yeah.
How many times have you gone to the second search page?
Almost never.
Never. Exactly. So that is the problem with marketplaces. You'll only look at the top 3, top 5, top 6 things.
Yep.
Right? And if the SEO or your search prompt and everything is not right in place, you won't really find a good product or a good mentor. And you'll put the blame on the platform itself.
Yep.
You'll be like, oh, this didn't work out. Like eBay is not a good platform because it doesn't give me good search results. So that's why marketplaces has this problem. And also for us, to stand out in the market, because there are already a lot of mentorship marketplaces going in and there in the market already. So to stand out, to give out something quality and something different to the end user, we need it to be a tool first rather than a marketplace.
Okay. Makes sense. So you need to figure out which side is more constrained, which side creates the right value for the other. And it seems like in the mentorship side, having good mentors, and especially given the competitive environment of there being other platforms, that's more of a focus for you.
Yeah, for me, yes, but I can't really generalize it and say that don't go to marketplaces. Don't build a marketplace. Of course, I mean, marketplace has its own pros and cons as well. It actually depends upon, as a business owner, as a growth person, as a product manager, whatever field you are more interested in. What is that more exciting, interesting for you? So of course, I mean, Amazon is a $1 billion company right now, and it will be. But we don't. And probably there will be less marketplaces in the future. But still, their marketplaces will still rely. But of course, they saturate after a certain point of time. Only the big players remain in marketplaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, it's not something you choose one side or only one side will prevail. No, it totally depends upon what type of business you are trying to grow.
Yeah.
And that actually is the answer. I mean, I would say you pick your own side. That would be better.
Yeah. What I've found as a head of growth, I worked at head of growth as a bunch of marketplaces, right? Affirm was a marketplace. ThreadUp was a marketplace. There is always one obviously limiting side, just like with you. So at Affirm, for instance, like we had signed all the best merchants. We had Amazon, Shopify, Walmart. There's no more concern about coverage. We covered like 76% of US e-commerce. So then the buyers have to be the more important side. So then as a growth team, we focus more there. On ThreadUp's side, when you would go to our warehouses, we would have piles and piles of inventory. So supply was clearly not the problem. Buyers were the problem. So then we focused mainly on the buyer side. So I think there's always kind of a clear example. Even at Fortnite kind of had a marketplace. So if you think about it, we have the creators who create the games, and then we have the players. So for us, actually players, we're the number one game in the world. We have like 80 million daily active users. It's like creators. We need to really focus on creators. So I think it almost always, you should probably focus on one side over the other, and you should try to like kind of let you, whatever's most log jammed, let you focus.
Yeah. So what I'll say, like I'll end this with first focus, let's say, as you mentioned, there's a lot of inventory going on. So see, if let's just focus on the supply side, one day or the other that supply side will overpower the demand side. Then this is a clear indicator for you to start working on the demand side as well. And if someone has cracked both the codes, that person will be the champion in this industry. That business will be the champion in this industry.
Yeah.
So if someone has the tendency or has the ability to crack both the sides, but you can't crack both of them simultaneously. You first need to focus on one, then only you can start working on the other.
Yes. Kind of like what we were just talking about with channels. Like you can't just focus on a million channels at once. You need to figure one out, put it on autopilot, then shift your focus there. And as a head of growth, yes, you're going to hire amazing teammates, but ultimately a lot of the brain power and decision you need to take. And we can't focus on a million things at once. So that's why focus is really important.
True. I totally agree with that.
Okay. So this user feedback loop that we started with before we went on the detour of which side of the marketplace to focus on, I think it's a very, very important point for people. And I'm curious, like, how did you develop those initial relationships, that Rolodex? How did you just reach out to people randomly like, hey, I'm head of growth, I've seen you use it via email, or what's the best way?
This episode is brought to you by Sprig. What if product teams knew exactly what to build to reach their goals? From increasing conversion to boosting engagement, these challenges require a deep understanding of your users, something we can't get from product analytics alone. Meet Sprig, a product experience platform that generates AI-powered opportunities to continuously improve your product at scale. First, Sprig captures your product experience in real time through heat maps, replays, surveys, and feedback studies. Then, Sprig's industry-leading AI instantly analyzes all of your product experience data to generate real-time insights. Sprig AI goes even further with actionable product recommendations to drive revenue, retention, and user satisfaction. Join product teams at Figma and Notion by uncovering AI-powered product opportunities at scale. Visit sprig.com/product-growth-podcast to book a demo and get a $75 gift card.
So initially we had like very little amount of signups. I mean, of course, that's the case when you start up. So I just used to, just send them an email, like write down my email by myself. Hey Akash, I just saw you registering on TopMate. Thank you so much for using the platform. I would love to connect with you sometime just to get a small feedback. I do have few questions for the product we are building. Would love to see if that fits your use case. And I got a response 90% of the time.
Wow.
So then I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn, then on Instagram. And now out of those, like every morning when I wake up, I see 80 plus messages on my WhatsApp and messages. And 50% are from the users. So that's how from email and LinkedIn, we all switched to WhatsApp. So I'm connected with all those people. So that's how I started building those loops. And initially it was not that structured. Initially I was just used to, like, on top of mind, if I, like, whenever we are discussing an experiment, trying to run an experiment. So I'm like, okay, before running an experiment, I also try to run a very small primitive feedback loop. I just, on the top of my mind, 5 people, I just text them, a small blurb. Hey, hi, we are trying to run an experiment. What do you think about this?
Yep.
Slowly and gradually I realized that every experiment needs to be now more focused and more niched now. So I mean, a certain experiment might be more suitable for, let's say, for a personal branding person rather than a product person. So now I have created those cohorts on an Excel sheet of mine where I've automated the WhatsApp messages. I just click on it, the message goes, and I get a response.
Nice.
So before even starting an experiment, I have a clear-cut data with me that, okay, I texted 200 people. Out of 270 people said yes. 30 people said no. The rest 100 are probably in between the places. So I'm like, yeah, this is a good experiment to start off. So I do the same now. After the experiment is run for a week, I go back to them. I ask them, okay, out of those 70 people who said yes, 50 people said yes, this was a good thing. So I'm like, yes, I was able to, give delight to more than 50% of the people who were initially interested. So this was a good experiment. So these are the things which I incorporate in my feedback. But initially it was in a very unstructured manner. I was just randomly texting them at certain point, any point of the day. But now I know, okay, if I need to run an experiment at 5 p.m., by 3 p.m. I have an automated link for the WhatsApp message. I just send them to all of them.
That's awesome. And one thing that I don't think we covered in your day in the life is if you have 80 messages, then you probably need some time just to respond to messages daily, huh?
So Bangalore traffic helps me a lot with that. So whenever I'm traveling, so I don't have my own conveyance, so I probably book an Uber or an auto.
Yeah.
So it takes me like 15 to 20 minutes to reach office. I use that time either to read a book or to reply to my messages.
That's how you keep up on all your messages. Because that's a problem I have. It's just like I get so many messages. At some point, I just like drop the thread on 50% of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, like my family complains a lot about this. They're like, you don't reply to our texts. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I start prioritizing, okay, this is a good user. I need to reply to the user first.
So sometimes you do just have to drop the ball in some communications.
Yeah. So, I mean, it happens. Of course, I mean, that is something I'm still figuring out how to manage the message part very efficiently. I can't really give my WhatsApp to someone else or outsource it.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to figure out, or in between, like if I have like a half an hour, 45 minutes lunch break. So I cut short it by 5 minutes and use those 5 minutes to reply to my emails and WhatsApp.
Okay.
So I've basically put like 10 minutes gap at the start of the day when I reach office, around the lunchtime and before I'm leaving for the office to just, clear out all my emails and messages. That's how I try to more communicative and, and effectively what I can say in responding to people. So but of course, I mean, there are few cases. I mean, there's one creator, I mean, she's like a very big creator. I mean, Niharika is her name. I mean, she always complains to me. You say you text me, then you put me on read, and then you don't reply back. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm still learning how to use my WhatsApp very efficiently.
Yeah, it's just a constant struggle if you have this big community.
Because the thing is, like, I'm writing a text, and then suddenly someone comes up and like, hey, Shubham, I have a doubt, and we are running this. I'm like, okay, yeah, fine. I'll just put my phone down, I'll start talking. And then I just forget, oh, fuck, I had to reply to someone.
So now I want to continue on the practice of product growth. You talked a little bit about the metrics, but can you go deeper? Like, what are the metrics that matter for you? I think you said at one point it was like bookings, but now you have a different metric. So why was bookings or North Star before? What have you changed it to? How did you decide to make that change? And what do you look at under the North Star?
So this is something like when we talk about the specifically North Star or any metric to chase, it is something which comes from, a lot of channels. One is, of course, how the investors or the VCs are looking at my business, how the founders are trying to shape the business as of now, and what's the team vibe is. I mean, a person from social media will always focus on, growing the social media. A person from product will always focus on, okay, let's increase product interactions. A person from the founders will always focus on, getting more business, getting more revenue. For investors, it can be, converting, getting more paid customers, or maybe increasing the signups and everything. So it keeps on changing. It's never just one metric. Let's say I'll give you like a very small example. So let's say the current metric is to get more bookings. Just an example. So we figured out that to get more bookings, we need to have more people on their public profile, on their top made profile. And we realized that, okay, if a person has, let's say, 10,000 views on their profile, 10% of them ends up booking with that person. So I asked the product team to work on something which, increasing the conversion. The 10% conversion rate should go by around, let's say, 15 to 20% in the next 1 month. Then I sit with my social media and the marketing and the sales, my social media and marketing team, that let's try to increase the average public profile views from 10,000 to 20,000. So even if we don't increase the conversion rate, but if we have increased the public profile views, so we're able to get twice the business we are getting right now. And then I sit with my social media team that, okay, we need on an average 20,000 views on every person's public profile. So let's ramp up or come up with a marketing campaign or a social media campaign, which helps people in talking more about their own top made profile. So something like, so basically I try to, give a flavor of each and every department to a single metric. And that's how I work on it. I mean, a very good example would be the creators meetup. I'm sure you would be willing to talk about it as well.
Yeah.
So in what creators meetup we did was like, we did a voting campaign. So we did a voting, put a voting widget on everyone's public profile. So a lot of people told me that, okay, you made 10 winners and those people came to the meetup and they ended up winning a trophy and stuff like that. So I was like, no, that was not the metric we were chasing. We were trying to increase the public profile views because we realized if I as someone who's a growth guy, put out your top made profile on my social media, you wouldn't really get a lot of traffic on your profile. But if you go out and say that, hey, I am nominated for a certain award, why don't you go and vote for me?
Yeah.
And then people will visit your public profile. Let's say 1 lakh people or 0.1 million people are visiting your public profile. I'm sure 5 to 10% will end up visiting the services. And out of this 5-10%, 50% will end up booking a call with you.
Yep.
So for us, Creators Meetup was a very good example where we tweaked the whole scenario for an outsider, but we ended up getting a lot of bookings, a lot of revenue for us. So it actually helped us, satisfying the product team, the activation team, the founders and the investors all.
Yep.
And when people talk about their public profile on social media, so let's say I'm very sure, like if you talk about Substack on social media, Substack will get 5 to 10% more traffic on the landing page.
Yep.
So just like that, if a good creator talks about Top Mates Creator Awards on social media, people who are competing with him him or her in that space, they will check out what Top Mate is.
Yep.
Or people who follow him or her, they will check out what Top Mate is. So that's how we cater to more customer acquisition, more activation, more product interaction, and of course, more revenue for us.
Yep. So that's an example where, like, going back to our earlier discussion, if you were just a marketing person or you're just a product person, you wouldn't have actually thought about this initiative, just invest in, let alone to like have these different metrics for these different people. And I think that speaks to kind of the benefit of having a growth person. Okay. So the metrics, it sounds like the metrics, ultimately, they need to boil down to an outcome metric, which for you guys is revenue. And the driver of that outcome metric is bookings. But you might have an input metric for each team that's different. Social media might have profile visits, product might have profile to booking conversion. So that's your general approach to metrics?
Yeah. So basically, of course, we need to figure out one North Star metric and then fix on, okay, what would be an input for it to get this output out of it. So basically, there is a lot of discussion. I mean, if I talk about Creator Awards, there was like a 1 month long discussion going on a weekly basis. And the first draft we had for the creators meetup or the voting was completely opposite what we ended up executing. So it keeps on changing as you brainstorm. But of course, you have an outcome already. You know how to put an input to it, and then you just make a journey out of it.
Okay, sounds good. And yeah, the creators meetup worked on me. So Dr. Bart Jaworski, he's a PM creator. He messaged me on WhatsApp, Akash, please go vote for my top mate profile. And I think he ended up winning, right? He was one of the winners. So.
Yeah, I guess he was in top 3, most probably.
Yeah. So it worked, right? It helped me get interested. Did you vote? In top. I voted for him, of course. I mean, if my friend asked me to vote for them, I'll vote for them. Yeah, exactly.
See, this is what we wanted to, tap onto, because we realize for our creators, for our users, of course, nobody is just on LinkedIn. Nobody is just on Instagram. They have their own personal contacts. They have their own personal Telegram, WhatsApp, whatever different platforms. They're like closed loops and closed groups. I mean, I can give you a very good example. A 12th standard student was a winner in one of the categories because she asked her whole school to vote for her.
And they're so connected compared to us older people.
I mean, those Gen Zs have mobiles with all the time.
Yeah.
Right? She was like, I put it on my school group. My teachers, my principals, my schools, people who live in my downtown, they all voted for her.
Yeah. And that gave you a lot of exposure.
Exactly.
I think the flip side of that, though, and I've done a lot of these growth campaigns, is sometimes you get a lot of non-ICP users.
True.
So how do you think about that? Because, like, for instance, if you gave that product team a goal around conversion, probably conversion was much lower with all these people coming just to vote.
So I guess, it's more about I guess this is a problem which I can't really, as of now, I don't have a solution to it. But I figured out, it's like, if I'm like, let's say I'm getting 50,000 registrations on a month, I can say that, okay, around 20 to 30% would be the perfect ideal ICP users I will get. So again, improving the conversion is another problem. Increasing the top of the funnel is another problem. So I'm primarily focusing more on the top of the funnel side, because improving the conversion has, you need to wear a different hat altogether to work on it. And it comes, a lot from a lot of learning. So right now, I'm not primarily focusing on a lot more ICP, because for TopMate, social media is a very good distribution channel which has become for us so far. So I'm happy with a lot of non-ideal ICP users, because after a certain point of time in the given era, everyone wants to be a creator. So even if they are a non-ideal ICP candidate right now, maybe in 6 months or so, they'll become an ideal ICP candidate somehow.
Everybody wants to be a creator. It's hilarious. Okay. So you've said you use a prioritization matrix. So what matrix do you use? And can you give us a real world example of how you've used that recently?
So, it's come mostly derived from an Eisenhower matrix, which basically has 2 sets, important and urgent. And I make 4 subsets of each and everything. Something which is important, not urgent. Something which is not important, but urgent. Something which is important and urgent. Something which is not important, not urgent.
Yep.
And I just chart out the whole day, putting all the tasks in these 4 blocks.
Okay, so you do it for your daily planning at the beginning of the day.
Daily, weekly, and monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, so I am too much into journaling. So I just print out my own customized journal.
Okay.
And I, every Sunday night I'll sit out and chart out what I need to do in the next 1 week.
Okay.
And then every morning when I'm waking up, I break it down on a daily basis. And on the last day of every month, I just give a feedback to myself and I chart out what I need to do in the next month. So of course, when I look at a very monthly level, so it's something very surface. When I do on a weekly level, it's something one step deeper. But when I do daily basis, it's exactly very specific. Okay, I need to do this because this is very something urgent, but not important. This is very important and urgent. I need to pick this first thing in the morning today.
Yeah.
So this is how, this is a very simple thing I figured out. I used to try a lot of things, but I guess 6 months back I read a book, how to take decisions, something like that. It's a very small book.
Yeah.
And it was the first chapter in that book.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did it from that day onwards. I feel my productivity has increased a lot.
So I used to use the Eisenhower matrix. I think honestly what the problem for me was I would put too much stuff in important, urgent. I wouldn't finish important, urgent. And so I'd never get to important, not urgent. So how do you go from because when you set up that matrix at the beginning of the day, you're so optimistic. In 30 minutes, I'm going to respond to all my advertisers. In 2 hours, I'm going to write my newsletter. How do you kind of manage that to go from this is what I'm hopeful about on the matrix to this is the reality of how much I can accomplish?
So again, it has a lot to do what I'm chasing, in terms of North Star metric. So I'll again give an example of the Creators Meetup and the Creators Award. So we knew we wanted to get more revenue out of it. So every task has to be assigned with the North Star metric we were chasing. So I realized, okay, this task is going to directly impact the North Star metric. I was like, no, this task would be would have an indirect impact on it. So I just, prioritize them accordingly. So of course, initially I also used to do, just from my own understanding, this is important, this is not urgent. Slowly and gradually I realized, okay, I need to be more objective in assigning things, why it is urgent and why it is not urgent, why it is important, why it is not important. So that really helped. But of course, it's a very evolving with time game, and it keeps on improving with time. And just putting things in 4 blocks will never work. Will never ever work. You need to be more objective. That's the beauty of maths and objectivity in life. As you put more objectivity and data and numbers into it, things become more simple and easy. And of course, it depends on individual to individual. It's not something if you look at my journal and you try to mimic the same thing, it will never work for you. Because from my mindset, something would be important. From your mindset, something would be urgent, because we have a very different, skill level and proficiency level.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you prioritize for your team?
So for my team, basically, how I generally do is, let's say someone has recently joined a team. So I give them a month time. I tell them you work on your calendar accordingly. They work on that. Okay, you create your own calendar. Let's take an example of a social media person. I give that person a week or two, for 15 days time. You just focus on the social media. Just look at all the previous posts which has worked and come up with a plan for yourself. And then after 15 days, we'll sit together. She'll be like, okay, we did a reel, we did a collaboration, we did this, and everything out of these 5 things, only 2 things worked. Now I'll ask her, what is something which you are more comfortable with? And she's like, okay, I'm very comfortable in, writing email content. So I'll be like, okay, let's put that at the end of the day, because you are very comfortable and you are more proficient in that. And we're like, okay, what are you most uncomfortable with? She'll be like, okay, I'm most uncomfortable with, let's say, designing part of the things or the visual part of the things. I'll be like, okay, let's work on that together for the next 15 days. Bring that into your comfort zone, and then we'll pick the next most uncomfortable thing for you. So that's how I train people under me. That's how I work people, not train exactly, work people under me who are working along with me. And then within 2 months or so, they work on their own autopilot mode. I'm not really someone who, sits with people each and every day, take follow-ups and just, suck the blood out of them and okay, do this. No. I just talk to them, discuss with them what they are doing right now. Are they happy with it? What can we do now? And I prefer to make them trigger their own thoughts, not just put my own thoughts into it. I used to do that before, but then I read a book, The Mom Test, and it made me think it made me look at the world in a very different POV. And from that, I realized it's better to not lead on to people. It's better to lead them their lives by themselves. And that's how I work with people who are working along with me.
One of the techniques you use a lot is TAT. What is that for people who don't know, and how do you use it?
So TAT is just a simple acronym, and it stands for turnaround time. And I generally try to, do experiments in a very time-boxed manner. I don't really a person who is like, okay, let's run an experiment, see where it goes. I'm someone who is like, okay, let's run an experiment and get back in 1 week and see how has that performed. Let's see if I'm using the feedback user loop. Let's text 50% and just gauge what's the first feedback in the 24 hours. Let's not wait for 25th hour. So this is what I'm very particular about, because I've realized as a growth person who handles a lot of persons along with him, it becomes difficult if you keep on, delaying each and every event, each and every conversation, each and every interaction, each and every experiment, because there are so many stakeholders involved. And if every stakeholder, if you are just, going 10 minutes with a 10 minutes delay every time, with 5 stakeholders, you're already 1 hour back, lagging by 1 hour. So I have this very strict policy. If we need to meet at 5, I'll make sure we are meeting at 5. If we need to analyze an experiment within 5 days, so at the 5th day, we'll make sure we are meeting. So I'm very particular about that. My team actually hates me on that, but I've realized this a hard way. Initially we were not very time boxed, and we realized the objectives and everything we were meeting the objectives, but in a very delayed manner, and realized we lost a lot of traction initially because of that. So it has a lot to do with myself. I had to rejig and, sort of set up my own mentality to be very time boxed. And so I prefer keeping a strict deadline for each and everything and trying to do each and everything within it. Even if it's, let's say, even it gives you like a 50% of the feedback or 50% of the ROI, but just do that discussion then and there only.
Okay. Yeah, I think if there are 2 tent poles of growth that people should walk away with from this conversation, one is experimentation and the second is speed, right? You need to do things that you can learn from quickly, move quickly, evolve quickly. If you're not changing, if you're not learning quickly, if you're doing these long drawn out 3-month cycles, you're barely a growth person.
True. I'll just add one more thing, which comes from Paul Graham's very famous essay, Things Which Do Not Scale. As a growth person, you need to have that mentality, to first pick up things in a non-scalable manner. If it's just getting first 100 users, try to talk to 50% of them. If you're trying to, let's say, activating first 100 users, try to do that manually. If 100 people have been activated, try to get in touch with them, try to talk to them. Non-scalable conversations is something I'll always, push each and every growth guy to, get into it. The more conversations, the more interactions which you have with your users, with your customers in a very non-scalable way is something which will really help as a growth person you are.
100%. So in 36 months, you mentioned Topweight went from 1 booking to 30,000 plus bookings per day. This is like an amazing growth story. Can you break down what have been the most effective growth levers for you guys?
So I'll give you in a phase-wise manner. So initially when we built the product, so it was primarily built by people who are engineers by degree. So for us, targeting the software persona, the techies, the software developers and people, it was a clear indicator. Yeah, we resonate with them. We know them, how they talk, how they think. We know the vibe. We have been we have been with them, right? For a lot of time. So we targeted those set of people, and somehow the supply demand of this industry, where there's a lot of interaction and the mentorship and guidance happening, actually suits the software and tech industry as well. Even if you go into the market right now, tech is the most demanding job. Tech has the most supply and most demand right now in terms of numbers, in terms of pay and everything. So we started with software, which helped us a lot. And what I figured out is software people are very closely knitted with each other. If a person is a software developer at Google, he probably knows 10 more software developers at Google and Microsoft as well. So they keep on, interacting, they keep on exchanging information, and then that actually helped us in word of mouth a lot. From there, we took a learning that yes, this is a pseudo community which we have targeted. So we started, scouting for more communities. So after a year or so of, picking up each and every category, let's say product, data, software, we focused on a very important thing, a very particular thing, which was the LinkedIn Creators Accelerator program. Are you aware about it?
No.
So it's just a cohort which LinkedIn picks up on a country level. So let's say from India, US, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, I guess. So where they pick, in India, they did it in 2022 for the first time. It was a cohort of, I guess, around 200 creators who create content regularly on LinkedIn. So for them, LinkedIn was trying to build themselves or, portray themselves as a upcoming platform on social media in India. So they picked those people, paid them a certain amount, of course. It was a partnership between those people and LinkedIn. Gave them a lot of community managers to, let's say, 10 people at one. Gave them trending topics to create content about, help them with the content creation strategy and stuff. What we did was we tapped onto that community. So it was a closed group of 200 people, super hyperactive on social media. We ended up getting around 80 to 90 people out of those 200 onboarded on our platform. We did a collaboration with those people. And within that community, people started talking about TopMate. And once 200 people, and ended up, getting all those people registered in TopMate in summers of 2022. That was the first hyper growth spike in our metrics we had. So we saw 200 people talking about TopMate on LinkedIn. It helped us really lot. It helped us a lot. I mean, they started announcing their TopMate pages. They started taking sessions on TopMate. And at that time in India, LinkedIn as a monetization tool was just limited to brand promotion. So there was nothing for LinkedIn creators specifically in India to earn money except from branding or brand deals and stuff.
Yeah.
So that helped us a lot. From looking at those people, from consuming their content, a lot more people came into the TopMate user base.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. So now the second learning we had was to target a community. So then we started, scouting for more well-established communities, well-established closed groups. So then we figured out that in US, data as a community is very strong. I mean, I've met people from West Coast to East Coast, and they all are a part of one community, which is run by one of the most influential peoples in data. Like I've met a lot of data creators who are huge on social media, but they are connected with a newbie and aspiring data creator as well. So that was how we doubled down on the community learning. And we figured out, yes, this is how we're going to be. So this is how it's going to work. So we focused on community-led growth a lot, and which has helped us. And the second thing which helped us was the social media distribution. So we figured out that as a platform, we can't market our users because we are a tool. We are not a marketplace. So what we did was we started giving them assets by which they can market themselves with a flavor of TopMate in it. So let's say you get 5 bookings on TopMate in a month. So I'll give you an automatically generated, beautifully designed poster that, hello everyone, I had 5 bookings this month, and these are my stats. Out of 5 people, 4 gave me 5 stars. Something like that. Which people would love to flex about themselves in a very subtle way. TopMate was, linked with it. So social media sharing about TopMate, not in a very explicit way, where, people just say, hey, I'm on TopMate. No, but by sharing carousels, visual for posters, testimonials and stuff like that. That was the second thing which helped us, apart from community-led growth, to get a lot more bookings. Because when you see someone who is your peer, who is someone who comes from your same industry, and he or she is talking about a certain platform and flexing about himself. I mean, I'm sure people like you and me who have a certain amount of expertise in their own industry, we love to help people who are trying to become who are aspiring to be a part of this industry. And it gives a good amount of validation, which can't be materialistically evaluated. So for them, giving them those assets which they can put out on social media really helped us a lot. So these are the 2 things which primarily helped us in, growing from what I can say, like in the first 7 days, we only got 1 booking on the platform. And today we get 30,000 bookings a day.
That's an amazing growth story. So one of the more interesting things about how you run your life is you spend a couple months in the US, then you go back to India. Talk to me a little bit about how you made that decision and why you do that.
So TopMate was started in 2021, summers of 2021. So we always knew that India being a price sensitive market, and in India, mentorship and guidance has nothing to do with monetization. It's more on the validation and the value you provide. So it would be difficult for people to, to make them pay for mentorship or guidance. I mean, what we are trying to set up, like in a virtual context. But we wanted to understand the industry. We wanted to, take that leap of faith. So we started building in India first. So for the first 1 year, we did primarily India. We had nothing, like when it comes to international, we had nothing to offer. Sorry. But then in October 2022, we were like, yes, now we have a good amount of users in India. We are getting a good amount of traction in terms of bookings, revenue and everything. So we took that decision. Okay, let's move to US now. But the first thing which the roadblock for us was we don't understand the US culture, frankly speaking. I mean, I was born in Rajasthan, grew up there, did my college in Bombay. But for me, US was never a part of my story. So to understand that culture, to have that conversation, I mean, we had to come to US. So that's when we were like, okay, let's move to US, stay there for a time. meet people, interact with people, understand how the world works here. And I can give you like very clear-cut distinctions. For a creator in India, still brand deals is one of the best sources of revenue or the highest paying revenue stream. But for a US person, I mean, I know people who are earning more from value than brand deals.
Yep.
And this is what a US creator will always prefer, to focus more on the value they are providing.
Yep.
This is a very cultural difference between an Indian creator and a US creator. And we realized our product has a more better market fit in US than in India. And that came out from a lot of conversation interactions I had with a lot of people here. So what I did was I started coming to US. So now I have two different user feedback loops, two subsheets on my sheet. One is from US, the other one is from India. So when we are running experiments for the Indian users, I talk to them. When we are running experiments for the US users, I talk to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, coming to US has obviously helped us a lot. And of course, it's again an ever-going process. You keep on interacting, you keep on learning, you get more nuanced as when it comes to understanding of the US culture. So that's why I come to US, stay here for a certain amount of time, go back to India, work with my team there, make them aware, okay, this is the next new learning I have. Let's double down on this, run an experiment. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, we'll learn something out of it.
Yeah.
So that's why travel is a very important or an integral part of my professional space.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of heads of growth doing quite a bit of travel, especially if you're entering a new market. You need to be the expert. You need to know the most about the American market. You can't rely on your team to go do that. You have to actually go do that. So I love this insight. So now I want to shift to kind of like the hot topic that everyone likes to talk about, which is AI. How do you use AI in your day-to-day? And how do you encourage your team to use AI in their day-to-day?
So for me, AI is more on the summary side of the things. I mean, as you mentioned, I guess yesterday, that when you had to talk to Apollo, when you were tackling the Apollo's problem statement, you just put all the G2 reviews on a ChatGPT and it gave a good summary out of it. So I also try to do the similar sort of things. I, go to my customer support emails. I filter out all the emails from US coming up, from India coming up, the issues with the product thing, the issues with the payment, the issues with the onboarding and everything. I run a summary of them on ChatGPT and I figure out, okay, out of 100 emails on customers on, let's say, onboarding part, 20% are saying that the landing page doesn't work, that the issue with the CTA. So that's how I use ChatGPT to basically what I can say, eliminate the mundane task for me. I mean, which is more like, just collating data and collecting data. So I remove that part from my life using ChatGPT and AI, and I focus only on the analysis part of the things, where I can just look at the perfect segregation of the data I have and I work on it. And then, of course, I do a few checks and balances by manually picking out one email in between, just check, okay, if this works, what ChatGPT is showing. So this is where I use ChatGPT. Other things where I use ChatGPT in my professional spaces, of course, let's say if I'm running an experiment. So I, of course, do the whole I write the whole experimentation prompt over there. And I talk to ChatGPT. What would be the best structure to explain it to someone? Because when it comes to templating a structure, ChatGPT is a master at it, frankly speaking. I mean, I guess I remember you talked about the maker thing. So I've minimized my maker time investment by using ChatGPT a lot. So when let's say I'm going into a meeting where I'm discussing about the social media strategy, I'll just put down all the 50, 20 thoughts I have. I'll be like, okay, can you just give me a detailed summary of it? So I get a summary. I already had the thoughts, the bullet points in my head. I link them together and then I talk in the meeting. So that's how I use ChatGPT for myself.
Okay, great. And as you forecast the future of head of growth roles and growth manager roles and growth social roles and growth sales roles, all these roles we've talked about, how do you think AI is going to reshape this? Like, let's imagine GPT-7, right? GPT-4 was a huge jump from GPT-3. GPT-3, we passed the Turing test. It was a huge jump from GPT-2. We can imagine 5, 6, 7, they're going to be big, big jumps. How do you think the role is going to change?
I mean, it will become more objective with time. I mean, I haven't worked with someone from US. I primarily worked with, let's say, a social media person or marketing or a salesperson or data guy from India. So let's say if I talk about a marketing, sales or a social media person, they don't really think about the tech side of the things. They are not very objective in the part. They're more into experimentation. So I guess with ChatGPT, we'll see people coming with a more objectiveness and technical expertise, even in social media, sales and marketing roles. Because ChatGPT assists you a lot. If you lack something, if you lack a certain skill in your life, ChatGPT can be that, that placeholder for you. So in the growth field, I feel, let's just say you are missing one person in your team right now. If it's a salesperson or a content writer, for example. So you can just use ChatGPT. You can let ChatGPT a substitute for some time. Because I have personally seen whenever one person leaves your organization, there's a roadblock for you. Unless you are there to, substitute on that behalf. But again, it takes a certain amount of time, certain amount of your bandwidth from your life. So ChatGPT will always do that integral part for you. And of course, from a technical POV, it will be what I can say like an efficiency booster and productivity booster for the whole growth space. And as you mentioned, like people use ChatGPT to improve their PRDs and structure. So the documentation part of the things will have a huge impact because of ChatGPT on it.
Okay. So do you think that huge explosion of growth roles we've had in the last 20 years, do you think that explosion is going to continue over the next 20 years, or because growth are going to be so much more efficient that it might slow down?
No. I mean, growth will always explode. That's a very strong gut feeling I have. I mean, a lot of people might say that ChatGPT will take away the growth roles and stuff. No. I mean, because at the end of the day, you need a human behind it. You need interactions with your users. You need a lot of feedback coming up from the user. You need a lot of basically interactions, and feedback is something which I feel ChatGPT can never have. And it has a lot to do with the growth roles, be it anything, sales, social media, marketing, product, data. That interaction piece is something which a human can only do. And a person who is very good at it will always, surpass ChatGPT in that space.
Okay. So we've sold growth pretty hard for the last hour and a half. If you're somebody who's aspiring to a growth role, what's your advice to these people who are aspiring to break into growth? What should they be doing? How should they be sculpting their resumes and experiences to break in?
So the first piece of advice is understand what makes a business. What is a business? What's the essence of being a business owner, being a part of a business? I mean, a lot of people, they're like, I just want to put it on my LinkedIn. No, that's not what makes you a growth person. Understand the nuances of running a business. Look at things from a first principle. Read a lot of things on basic principle strategies. Understand the basic terms. What is CAC? What is LTV? What is MOM? What is MAU? What is DAO? Just understand these terms.
Yeah.
And try to link that with any ongoing trendy startup, and just think of, okay, let's say DoorDash is a new startup coming into the business. Okay, how many DAO they have? Just work on the maths. Just, you need to have a very objective, business-minded approach in yourself, in a day-to-day life routine. If you have that already, then you are a perfect growth person for any industry. This is the most basic thing. You need to understand the business first. And if you can understand that business, and if you can't understand, there are a lot of books. I mean, there's a growth hacking book by Sean Hallish.
Yeah.
It's one of the best books I've read. There is one, Blitzscaling. That's a good book as well. There's the Blue Ocean Strategy. There is the Art of Strategy. These are the few books which you should read and understand the nuances of running a business, of being into a business. Don't do it just for the sake of showcasing it as a fancy stuff on LinkedIn or social media, but to make yourself more content with the volume and weight of the knowledge. And if you can look at things from a very first principle POV, with a very business and objectivity and business-minded approach, then you are the person to look at growth of any industry.
Okay. And now if somebody wants to get an interview with you on your team, what would be your advice? What's the best way to get an interview?
So I guess my top mailing is always there. You can just ping me.
Yeah.
But for us, we rarely recruit people, I'll be very honest. I mean, we prefer a very lean team. I mean, I guess when I joined, I was one of the first person to join the team. Since then, we only had 10 more people in the last 3 years. So you can see, I mean, in 36 months, we only had 10 people, which is like one person in 4 months, 3 months now.
Yeah.
So for us, in getting an interview at TopMate, I guess good thing would be just, talk about the shortcomings of TopMate on social media.
Yeah.
And you have my attention.
Okay. I like that approach. And more generically, if somebody wants to get interviews for growth roles, not just at TopMate, what's your best advice for getting interviews?
So this is something I have recently realized, that a lot of people, what they do is they just, they make I've seen a lot of techies, the front end people, the designer people, they just come up with a new design template for a website's landing page and then put it on social media. Mm-hmm. Or they just make a product deck for a new problem statement they have faced, new problem statement for a certain startup, and they post it on social media. And I've seen founders commenting on that post and telling them, okay, just send me a DM, we'll set up a call.
Yeah.
So for someone, of course, the normal recruitment process is there. The company opens up a role, you apply there, and then there's a multiple rounds of interviews and you get shortlisted. But if that is not there, I'll always tell you, if you can capture the attention, grab the attention, just talk about their shortcoming. Just what do you think about the business? Because for any business owner, this is coming from a very startup centric POV. They are very passionate about their own business. And if they see an external who is more or less passionate, but he is passionate about that as well, and your problem statement, the solution which you are proposing resonates with them, then you probably have a shot at it.
Okay. And let's say you get the interview. How do you succeed in a growth interview, Loop?
So I don't really think that there is a one-shot strategy to succeed at a growth interview, but just understand the business first. I mean, if you're, let's say, interviewing for DoorDash, just think, okay, just pick one thing that my focus is to make DoorDash more revenue. Then how can you do that? And tell the person that I am coming from a certain mindset where I'll help you to generate more revenue. And then, then have a conversation with that. Because if the person is interviewing you for an organization, he or she is already aware of the problem that company is facing. To lead that interview from your side, tell them that I have did a thorough research on the revenue making strategy for DoorDash, and I'm happy to discuss that. And then have that conversation. And most probably they might not be having the same problem statement as one of the first priority right now. But if they see that intent that, yes, this person understands my business very well, this person has the passion to solve some very specific business problems, then you are a part of that team already.
Okay, cool. So let's switch to one last hot take that you have, which is you've said there's no such thing as work-life balance. Why?
So this comes from a very conventional mindset. I mean, we had this conversation in our office as well. I mean, so basically at a certain point of time, there were a lot of people, taking some breaks, taking some off time from the office. And it used to happen a lot. And when you're working with a team of 10 people, if 2 people take the 20, you are short of 20% workforce. And that impacts a lot in the whole loop of organization. So then we had this conversation that, people are not prioritizing work better. I'm not saying that you should always put your work at the first priority, but you need to have a priority list that at a certain point of time, I'll put my work first, and at a certain point of my time, I need to put my life first. A very good example is if someone has an exam tomorrow, just take an example. If an undergrad student has an exam tomorrow, he or she will not go to a family get together or going out to play. Does that mean that he is missing out on his life? No. He's compromising on something for a bigger purpose, or he's investing his time for something for a bigger purpose, which will have a better ROI in the future, in the long run. So I believe in work-life priority rather than work-life balance. I mean, there are a lot of people who might say that, yeah, I can only work for 8 hours a day and the rest of the time is something I want to give to myself. But what I've seen so far, most of the 50 plus age group is saying those statements. But when I talk about myself, when I talk about this statement, work-life priority, for someone who is less than 35, less than 40, if you haven't scaled anything in your life, if you don't feel validated enough, like the self-validation is missing in your life, then you need to step out of that work-life balance mindset and focus on work-life priority. And I also feel if you always have that feeling that you need to have work-life balance, so my 2 cents would be that, buddy, you're doing a wrong job for yourself. You're not passionate enough for your job. And I don't really demean, and I don't really want to get into that debate, where people say that when you're working for someone, you don't have that passion. When you're working for yourself, that you don't have that passion. No. Even if you're working for someone, even if you're working for yourself, if you are very dedicated, if that is something which entices you, which interests you, you'll always focus on the work-life priority, not work-life balance. I mean, let's talk about you also. Like, you have been working for a lot of companies. I guess since last year only you've moved solo, right?
Yeah.
So you might have missed a lot of things in your life, but I don't think you regret it, right?
No.
So, that's the thing. See, even if you try anything, no, you'll always miss out on something. Some events, some get-togethers, some games, something like that. But you need to have that calling. If you think that product management is my calling, and that was your calling, right? And you did miss on a lot of things. And you ended up excelling in that because that is your calling. So if you are missing out just because of your work and that is your calling, you will never feel that FOMO.
Yeah.
But if you are feeling the FOMO, then I'll say you are doing the wrong thing, brother. You need to change the industry, because until unless you have a work-life priority going on, you can't really enjoy your work. And once you stop enjoying your work, you are just, taking your body to the office and coming back home. You're not actually creating an impact. I mean, and being a human and not creating an impact is just, the biggest blunder you're doing to yourself.
Building great products is not easy, but today's podcast partner, StatSig, provides a complete platform for product growth. Here's how. Step 1. Keep building features behind feature gates. StatSig will allow you to turn these on whenever everything is ready. Even better, you can just open a feature to 5% of your users to validate it before launching. Step 2. Run A/B experiments easily. You can make data-informed decisions about your product. What's even cooler, StatSig will give you valuable insights based on events you log. And step 3, analyze. StatSig is a full tool for product analytics, session replays, and web analytics. Used by customers like OpenAI and Notion, StatSig is the most modern all-in-one data platform. And best of all, it can be used as fully cloud-hosted or run on top of your data warehouse. So check out statsig.com/growth. And if you reach out, tell them Akash sent you.
I almost feel like work-life balance is kind of a mind virus that has gotten into people where they feel like, oh, I've done 8 hours of work today, so now I must shift to watching Game of Thrones or playing fantasy cricket. It's like, well, what do you want to accomplish out of your life? What is giving you value? And if you really love your job, then hopefully that's also giving you positive value.
True. I mean, a very good example is, let's take an example of a millionaire. A lot of millionaires are there who will take a retirement and they just chill out their life. A lot of millionaires are there who are striving hard to become a billionaire, right? But that doesn't mean the person who is chilling out his life is doing a wrong thing. But for them, that is their real calling. And this is how they have preferred work-life priority. And for someone who's striving hard to become a billionaire, that is their priority lies. So this is how I feel. I mean, you need to figure out your own calling first. And once you feel that you have achieved something and you feel self-validated enough, because the first thing you need to make yourself satisfied before you make your manager satisfied or someone else. So if you are able to satisfy yourself, then you're going good. But if you feel that, no, I'm still not satisfied, if you have that feeling, then you need to ramp up. Then you need to buckle up and, work.
Okay, love it. I want to shift to your personal story a little bit. We spent so much time talking about growth. Let's just shift to Shubham. So first of all, you went to IIT. For people who don't know, how does one get into IIT? What is the process? What did it look like for you?
So, I mean, for people who don't know the full form, the IIT stands for Indian Institute of Technology. They're like, I guess, 21, 23 odd IITs now. So people take a entrance test after their 12th standard. You get 2 shots at it. One with your 12th standard and one just 1 year next to 12th standard. You can't take a break after 12th and then take it next to next year. You have to do it within the adjacent years. And I mean, now the things have changed a lot in India, but back in the days when I appeared for it in like 15, 16, something like that, it was one of the most important things people used to do. One of the only things people used to do, either medical or engineering. Now things have changed, like fashion has become, law is there, and a lot of other things. Content creation is there. And how do you get into it? Well, in India, there's a coaching culture going on. I mean, there are offline coaching. They have a lot of online coachings as well. I mean, normally people enroll in them after 10th standard, but I've seen people now, starting from 6th standard, 7th standard too. But that's just commercialization of coaching.
Yeah.
And you prepare for two years. You work very hard. You miss out a lot on life. But I guess, I mean, that's just the investment you do for yourself. I'm not saying that if you don't get into IIT, you probably will not excel in life. No, that's not the case. It's just that if that's your true calling, as I mentioned earlier, if that's your true calling, you won't really feel that as a sacrifice. You'll feel that as an investment you are doing to yourself. So people normally work hard and do a coaching enrollment for 2 years in 11th and 12th standard. Then they appear for the entrance. I guess 1.3 million when I last checked is the number of people appearing for the exam. Around 10,000 students get into it. There are like 23 IITs. Some has 100 seats, some has 1,000 seats, something like that. But yeah, that's the story. Any specific questions you have regarding it?
I'm curious, like, how much work is it really, so people can hear? Like, I believe like your average IIT student is studying like 6-7 hours a day, 7 days a week. Is that right?
So see, I mean, I was having the same conversation yesterday with a person I met in Durham. So it's not about, working very hard. It's more about working consistently. Like, I know most of us hit puberty after 10th standard or around that age, right? 13, 14, 15. That's the age we all hit puberty. And it's difficult to keep yourself consistent and focused during that time. We all had our first affair during that age. We all had our first smoke of cigarette. We all had our first interaction, like first love affair during that age. So that age is a bit distracting. If you have, if you have the tendency to, if you have that what it takes to keep yourself focused during those 2 years, then it's very easy to crack that exam. And consistently working on it slowly and slowly and slowly. I've seen people who were way more intelligent, who were performing much, much better than me in 11th standard, but they didn't do well in 12th standard because they got distracted. They did something, they got into something else and they didn't clear the exam. But again, life never ends for you if you don't clear the exam. There are multiple avenues available these days, and people, and those people are doing reasonably good. Something comparable to what I'm doing right now.
Nice. So after IIT, you had a little stint at McKinsey. I think a lot of people who are considering PM might also be considering consulting. What was your strategy to break into McKinsey?
So it was more of an immersion program I enrolled into, and because my college network helped me a lot to get into it. So of course, like I always knew that I am not someone who loves coding. At that time, I didn't really had any understanding of what coding looks like. So I was more into operations, strategy side of the things in my college days as well. I used to be a part of a lot of these operations, meetups, festivals, and lot. So I realized, I'm more of a people's person where I, drive things by interactions, drive things by taking feedback and stuff. So I enrolled for that immersion program. And of course, my alum network helped me a lot. I became a part of it. And then eventually I joined McKinsey. And the strategy was simple. Like that is where I realized the importance of reading a lot of books, a lot of articles on business and strategy. And so this is all where it started. So I left it after a certain amount of time because I realized, no, this is not something my calling is. And I became a part of TopMate. I did a little bit of side hustle at Impact Consulting. It's more on the social side of the things when it comes to consulting. But now my primary focus in the growth side. But for someone to get into it, I'll always suggest build that business mindset and problem solving mindset. Get into case studies, guesstimates, improve your objectivity in life. Look at the numbers everywhere. If you're looking at, let's say, a mic or an auto gear company, just think about, okay, how many businesses, how many customers they have, how many outlets they have. Just think about what's the maximum top line revenue they can make. And if you can just build that mindset, they don't really judge you for the accuracy, but they build you for the problem solving and the mindset you have. And if you have it, you're probably good to go. If you don't really get into the top MBBs, you'll get into the smaller ones like the big four. People can scale up and, they just get promoted to the big fours, MBBs as well.
Love it. So if somebody wants to be like you and they want to get a role like head of growth at a startup, can you tell us more about how you got that role and what would be your advice for someone aspiring to it?
So for me, it was relatively easier because the founders come from my college. They come from my hostel as well in IIT. So we already had a connect.
Network, right?
Yeah, network, you can call it. Yeah. So network actually helped me in getting a role at TopMate. But of course, as I said, if someone wants to join a startup as a head of growth or just growth, research about the product, research about the company, what they're trying to do. Talk to the founders, talk to the people working in the company. Just try to understand what is the problem statement they're trying to solve. And I can give you a very real life example. The first social media manager we hired was someone who sent us a meme video on our platform on TopMate. So she made a very funny meme video on TopMate, which actually trolled TopMate. And we were like, yes, we need someone like her who can create content for us. Maybe if not bash us, but she can bash someone else. And we hired her. We didn't go for an interview or something, just a small 15-20 minute chat with her over a Zoom call. And we hired her.
Yeah, that's how everybody on my team has been hired too. Yeah. They all came to me. They had work proof. They had researched me. They were my fans. So they understood my content. Boom.
So exactly. As a business owner, you feel more relatable when the other person has already shown some interest and has worked on your startup, has already worked on the idea you are building on.
Yeah.
And you feel, he's passionate enough. That's why he invested 15-20 minutes of his time to look at my idea. And now, if he has a certain intent, if he has a sense of relatability, I should hire him.
Love it. All right. Thank you for this wide-ranging conversation. I hope that everybody aspiring to growth learned a lot. Where can people find you online and how can they help you?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn already. I don't really create a lot of content on Instagram. I'm more of an introverted person and person who prefers consuming some random reels and stuff. But yeah, I mean, my LinkedIn and Instagram DMs are always open. I guess you can put them on the podcast and people like it's just Shubham Khoker you find on LinkedIn, and it's I guess the pretty unique surname I have. It wouldn't be that difficult to find me. But yeah, I mean, hit me up on LinkedIn. I try to reply to each one of them. Yeah, if not, they can just text me on Instagram.
All right. And to help you, I assume, use TopMate, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you are someone who wants to help us with TopMate, yeah, send me a meme videos. But bash TopMate, I don't worry. You have my attention. Whenever someone bashes TopMate on social media, I talk to that person personally. If that person is a user, I directly call him or her that, hey buddy, you just bashed. Can you please help me? What's the exact issue you are facing? Happy to help you. I mean, even if you prefer to discontinue using it, but still share the problem with me. That will actually help me in building the product better. If you're not a user, I'll just straight away comment on that. Happy to have a chat. This is my email. Please shoot me an email.
Love it. Such a problem-focused leader. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Akash. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find out about the podcast. You can find all the past episodes or learn more about the show at product-growth.com. See you in the next episode.